In this tutorial, we're going to discuss building a test in Blackboard Ultra. In this particular situation, this is just a multiple choice test, but you'll also see how you can use options like true, false, or add essay questions or fill in the blank questions, because those are all available in menu options that you have while you're building your test. So the first thing we're going to do is make sure that you've got your test questions available where you can see them. I prefer using them in a text format so that there's not any word formatting that comes along with them. Like in this example, we have the question, the answers identified as A, B, C, and D, and this really does help with some tests and in building tests in some situations. But in this case, Blackboard is going to interpret this as a bullet item, and it's going to change it to the number 1. So what I would recommend doing is getting rid of those the bullet numbers that you've got there by just turning that off. So I've clicked and dragged to select, and on my toolbar at the top, I'm going to click the numbering option that's selected and just take that off. You can still see that we have these 4 options. This one is still the one that's identified. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into our Blackboard course shell. I'm going to click the plus sign that appears when I mouse over the line where I want the test to appear. Click the plus sign, and I'm going to create. In the Create Item menu that slides out, I'm going to scroll down to Assessment and select Test. And then we're going to give this a name for what our test is going to be called. So this is going to be Chapter 14 Quiz. And now we're going to click the plus sign down here to get started building the assessment questions. So when we click the plus sign, you can see that a menu opens up, and you've got options to add text, reuse questions, or then add question types, and then also adding a question pool. So the difference between adding a question pool and reusing questions down here is that reuse questions will pull questions in from existing tests or from existing test banks or pools, and we'll keep them in the same order that you have them in. So if it's important that your questions are in a specific order, just remember that you want to use reuse questions. The add question pool will still allow you to pull questions in from existing tests or test pools, but it will randomize the questions for you. And so that's kind of the distinction between those two items. So if you want them to be in the same order, just remember you want to reuse your questions. That just will reuse the block as it appears in the test that you're pulling it from. In this case, we want to add a multiple choice question. So I'm just going to click on that option. And you can see that now we have a multiple choice question that's shown up. This is where our question text will go. When I click in there, you'll see that I've got some formatting options, and then our answers will go down here. So I'm just going to come back over to my test canvas over here and copy by clicking and dragging. So I've clicked and dragged to highlight the entire selection, to highlight the entire question. And now I'm going to copy. I use Control-C. If you're a Mac user, it's Command-C, or you can right-click and select Copy from the menu option that appears. And then we're going to click in our test question in the test canvas in Blackboard and paste the question here. So this gives us all the information. You can just reread it to make sure that you didn't miss anything. Now we want to make sure that we get the image. So I'm going to right-click on the image. So right-click on the image, and we're going to save as a picture. I've already created a folder in my pictures folder, or wherever you want to save this picture, as Chapter 14 images. So Chapter 14, because that's the test I'm working on. And I've saved this one already as Chapter 14-01. That way I will know that this image goes with question 1 in case I get mixed up or confused or anything. In this case, I've already saved it, and I've already saved question 2, the image for question 2, so I don't need to save it here. I'm just going to go ahead and cancel, but you would go ahead and save it. So now we're going to add the image into the question here, and we're going to do that by clicking the plus sign, and we're going to add an attachment. And that is kind of confusing because there's an image button down here, but in Blackboard Ultra, if you use the image button, it's going to ask you for an image URL. And so that means that you would have to be finding an image on the internet somewhere and using that image and linking to it. What we want to do is attach a picture to this question. And so we're going to just pick the image that we want, which is Chapter 14, number 1, and I'm going to open. And we have the option to add alternative text. This is important for students that might need a screen reader. If it's a decorative image, you can select that it's a decorative image, but we want to make sure that your students, if they have a visual impairment or need a screen reader to read the image, will understand the importance of the image and why you're using that image with this question set. So, hammer, striking a nail, measuring the force, or whatever this is doing. So it doesn't help if I can't spell. Measuring the force. And so we want our students to be able to view and download or view only. I'm going to just ask that they view only and then save it. Now we're going to go in and we're going to add our answers. So just click and drag to highlight the answer for the first option. I'm using Control-C to copy it. I'm going to click and drag to get the second one. Control-C to copy it. I'm going to click and drag to highlight the third one. Control-C to copy it. And the third one is the one that has been identified as the correct response for this one. So I'm going to mark the checkbox with the check mark by clicking it. And now we're going to click and drag to select the fourth one and copy that and save it. So now we have question 1 saying it's worth 10 points. At this point you could click in the points available box and change that to whatever you want it to be. Just read through it, make sure that this is correct. And again, you want to make sure that everything is correct. So just go back through it and read everything and then save it if you need to. If there's automated feedback that you want your students to get, you can just click that box and put correct answer feedback, incorrect answer feedback. And an example of incorrect feedback might be, you might need to review page 79 for more information on this process or something like that. So that's just kind of an example of something that you might use. I'm just going to cancel because I don't need to do that. At this point we can add more questions, so I'm going to click the plus sign and I want to add another multiple choice question. As you can see here, I could add an essay question or a calculated numeric question or any one of these types of questions. I'm going to go ahead and add a multiple choice, and this one is going to be a little bit different than the last one. So we've got question 2 down here, and here's our question text. So as I'm highlighting this, I notice that there is a mathematical equation here. So this one, 30 plus t squared, is going to be done a little bit differently. I'm going to go ahead and copy this, so I can right click and copy, or Control-C and copy, whatever your preferred way of copying is. Click in my question text in Blackboard and paste. And look over here at this equation. That t squared is missing because Blackboard doesn't really know how to make that in just regular text. So Blackboard actually has mathematical functions that you can get to by clicking the plus button. So click the plus button and then find the math function. And the math function gives you options, so you can do the square root of something, you can do fractions, you can do division, you can do a number with an exponent, or a number with a subscript, or a number or text with subscript. And basically all you're going to need to do for T2 is we want to go ahead and copy that, and we're going to see if we can just paste it into the Insert Math Formula function window. So I'm clicking right in between these two square brackets. These are actually square brackets. Let me undo. And I'm going to paste, and that actually copied it for me. If this didn't work, we could use this button right here to create a number or text with a superscript. Now I'm going to go ahead and insert. We're going to give it a second. So now we can make sure that our equation here is correct and it looks like we need it to. And this is where it's important for you to really double check and make sure that everything looks the way that you want it to. We also want to make sure that we put the image in, and again, the image is going to be labeled the way that you need it to be labeled, so that if your students are using a screen reader, it's reading that the information to them that you want them to know about that image. I'm going to click an attachment here. And I'm going to go ahead and add that this is a pulley lifting a 34-pound crate. I don't know if that's sufficient information, but you would be able to decide if your students needed more information than that. So another thing that I want to point out about this information here about your toolbar, I've got my window split in half so that we can see the test and we can see Blackboard's test canvas. So you might see different menu options on your toolbar. So you might not have to click the plus sign to get to the attachments. I believe you always have to click the plus sign to get to the math function though. So just if you see it, you can use it from the toolbar. If you don't see it, just remember you can click that plus sign on the toolbar. Okay, so now we're going to scroll down and we're going to look at our responses. So I've already taken out the bulleted, the numbered list that the formatting that came with it. So we just have the 4 possible answers, and I'm copying and pasting. So click and drag to select, Control C to copy, Control V as in Victor to paste. And now this is the one that's correct, so I'm going to copy that one and paste that here. And then I want to identify that one as the correct response. And so now I'm going to save. So now I have my beautiful test is all created and ready to go. I can go into my test settings and make whatever changes that I need to it. And then we would be able to deploy it wherever we need it to go. So right now it's undeployed. Basically that just means that it's hidden from students. They won't see it at all. But you can go ahead and work with it in other respects if you need to. Let's go ahead and create a final exam. So I'm going to create a new test, and this is going to come down to the test option and click test. And this is maybe my final exam, and I want my final exam to come from test questions that I have in all my quizzes. So now what I want to do is click the plus sign, and I can either add a question pool or reuse questions. So again, the adding question pool will pull in questions and let you randomize them. Reusing questions will keep the questions in the same order. So depending on how you want your questions presented to your students, that's how you'll select the option that you use here. I'm just going to reuse questions for now. So I'm going to pull up the reuse questions option, and you've got sources that you can select. So any test or assignment that you have in your course will display here. I'm going to go ahead and select my Chapter 14 quiz. I want all of my Chapter 14 quiz questions to be displayed on my test, so I'm going to select that and copy questions. Those are going to copy those to my test. Now if I wanted to add more, I could come down here, add the plus sign again, reuse more questions, and then let's go back to this one. We're just going to say this is a different test that I haven't used. So I'm going to copy my questions again. So you wouldn't actually do it this way because I've actually duplicated my questions, but just let's pretend that that was chapters 13 and chapters 14, and now we've added 4 questions for our final exam. So again, you can change the point value here. You can go in and you can edit your test settings. Just click the gear, change the date as you need to, change whatever you want on here, change the category, whatever you need changed, and then save it. And then you're ready to go. So again, we have an undeployed test that can go wherever you need it to go in your course. Just make it, just drag it to the module that you want it to go in, and then unhide it from students or make it visible to your students. And then you're all ready to go.